Holy crap.
Yep, we've got to do that. All right. So my first question for the panelists is, what is at least one benefit that you see of internships? Whoever would like to go first.
Don't all jump at once.
You're also polite. You're also
Well,
polite.
but by jumping in, then I'll take the obvious one. There is nothing more important than experience and being able to translate, what you've learned, that you've learned how to learn, and put that into practice in a functional setting, of whatever kind of profession of choice, that may be. And I'll kind of extend that with one concept further, around a change in kind of in the academia world. We're very focused on output. It's a paper that you turned in, it's a score that you've achieved on a test, whereas in most professional settings, corporate world, nonprofits, whatever the sector, it's going, output is going to be in terms of some type of results, project results, program results. And I think that is a nuanced but important shift in the concept of what your work output is, that an internship can help you really bridge those two worlds and make that adaptation.
Thank you, Greg. John, looks like you unmuted first.
Well, nice to be with you all today. Yeah, I think Greg's response is very helpful and on point. I think what I would add is, if I were in your shoes, and actually I have been in your shoes as San Diego State alum, I think I might have had classes in the very room that you're in right now at one point. And I know that, as I was moving from college into a career, there were lots of possibilities. And I think a benefit of an internship is to try to figure out, okay, I think I know a few fields that I might be interested in, but I'm really not all that sure what these fields involve. Or I think I have a sense of what a field involves, but that may or may not really be consistent with the reality of that field. And so I think a benefit is just to actually experience a field that you think you might be interested in, and to find out, number one, what is this all about? And number two, if I had an impression about the field, how accurate is that? And I'll illustrate this with one example. Our firm has not had that many interns over the years, but we have had a few. And there was one in particular that I think was a really good internship both ways. I think the intern got some stuff out of it. I think we got some stuff out of it. But they ended up deciding that they were going to go into a completely different field, in part because the internship gave them some firsthand insight into what being a management consultant is all about. And they said, this is a little different from what I thought it would be like. And they pursued something other than that. So I think that's a benefit of it, is just to sort of figure out what is this all about, and is it consistent with what I think it's like?
Thank you, John. Vince, you have something?
Yeah, I mean, well, I just love what my colleagues had to say. And, for John's example, extrapolated, when I was a freshman at San Diego State University, I did not start as a comm major. I started as a computer science major. And I had an internship in the field where I had to look at a computer screen for 8 hours a day and write code. And what I learned out of that was my interest in technology was more as a hobby, and that when I wanted to work on a computer program, I enjoyed it immensely. But the internship taught me that when I didn't want to be doing it, it drove me absolutely crazy. So the internship was successful in telling me what I did not want to do. And I need to be in communication environments. I need to be around people. I need to be talking to people and working with people. And so I switched majors as a result of an internship, which is a huge power before you invest, 4 years or 6 years in putting yourself on a certain trajectory. to have the opportunity to go swimming in that pool and decide if that's the pool that you want to spend your career in is just a wonderful gift. But one other quick thing I'll just add at the end here is having hired a lot of people, including many right out of college, I would say that when you have internship experience on your resume floats upward, because there are so many college graduates that have no professional experience. And you just want to ask yourself, what did you do all summer? Like, were you just on the beach or, and so, having relevant or even not relevant, but professional business experience, professional experience on your resume, I think really causes your resume to float up toward the top of the stack.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The second question that we have very often in the School of Communication is, what are some ways that your organization works with interns? How have you worked with interns in the past?
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in. I have been in a number of organizations that had interns. Some of them, I will concede, made the mistake of using interns for manual labor, very perfunctory responsibilities, copying, filing. And I think that's a real disservice to the student, and it's a disservice to the organization, and it's unprofessional. I think that in an internship, you might have to do some of that kind of work, but people who work there are probably doing some of that kind of work. But the real value proposition of an internship is to allow you to spread your wings, to manage some sort of workflow, whether it's a project or some limited duration achievement that you can lead from beginning to end, and in the process, learn about the organization, learn about the stream of work that they do, and learn more about yourself.
Thank you. Great.
So I guess I'll jump in here so that we can go in reverse order. And by the way, could you all hear me the first time around?
Yes.
Okay, because I think at one point I toggled over to my AirPods. So it sounds like you can hear me now, which is great. I said we haven't used interns within our firm all that much. Our firm's been around for going on 8 years now, and I think we have had 4 interns. And so I can actually answer this question pretty specifically. There are 2 types of work that we've had our interns do over the years. One was in the example that I cited earlier of the person who thought they might want to go into consulting and then decided not to. We partnered on an actual client deliverable. It was a fairly extensive and important document. What they got out of it was firsthand experience doing sort of associate level or first level work. So if somebody were to actually join our firm, this is the type of project they'd be working on. And this particular intern was well qualified to help with that. So that was the project. And I think 2 good things came out of that. One, again, they ended up deciding, hey, great experience, but this isn't what I want to be doing. But the other thing is they did such a fantastic job of it that I actually served as a reference for that person and said, hey, I've seen this person's work ethic. I've seen the quality of work that they do and so on, and I can highly recommend this person. So Vince, I would add that to what you said about a benefit of this being sort of a practical one, getting experience that makes you more marketable and maybe even a reference. All 3 of the other interns that we've brought on board, we've published a few books over the last 8 years, and they actually did research related to those books, mostly literature review type stuff. And I think it was helpful to them because they got to see sort of the theoretical perspective related to what we do by getting immersed in the literature. So hopefully it helped them. It certainly helped us with that part of what we were working on. And I will say that in one of those examples, quite candidly, the intern really didn't do all that well, not even sort of the minimum of what we were hoping for. And so it was kind of a missed opportunity maybe to get somebody who's willing to say, hey, I really strongly endorse this person. So I think it kind of cuts both ways. An internship can be a great opportunity to get somebody on your side who can serve as a reference and so on. And it could be a missed opportunity if you don't kind of lean into it and really get the most value possible out of it.
Thanks, John.
I had managed an intern just this past summer. Was a graduate student from Columbia University, and so in my role, I'm global director for client relationship management for a geopolitical risk intelligence firm. So my role is, for our team, is essentially supporting existing clients on their consulting projects and other solutions we may be doing for them, as well as sales and business development. So I looked at, in terms of what the intern got out of the project at the time, was twofold. I felt was my responsibility. One, hands-on experience, which we were able to do in the form of essentially having the intern shadow nearly everything that we were doing. As many client calls, sales calls that the intern could join, she was able to do so. We took the added benefit of having her take notes, which we could then go through afterwards and use also as another learning experience to talk through, like, okay, this is why, we went off on this tangent, during the sales call, because it was an opportunity to bring up, I recognized by listening to their previous response that I thought we had an opportunity to sell something this way. So we could talk through that as a learning experience. And then I kind of fell back into some of my teacher mode as well, and did as much conceptual teaching or training as possible. And then in terms of what we got out of it, again, so this was a graduate level intern. So we really treated this person as an associate or coordinator level employee, and essentially had that person do the job of a client relationship coordinator, which meant similarly, yes, doing some of the administrative work, but it would be the same administrative work that other members of the team would do as well. All the way through helping to draft business proposals.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Then the final question I have for you all as panelists before we open it up to the students is, what do you suggest that students do to identify a good internship match with their interests?
I think I'm the one person who hasn't gone first yet, so just to make sure we've got all the right combinations here. Since you're all students, and my guess is the fact that you actually showed up to this today, that probably means that you're good students. I would say do your homework. And I mean a few things by that. One is really do some self-reflection before you start thinking about a particular internship. Ask yourself questions like, where do I think my giftedness is? What am I passionate about? Where do those two things sort of intersect with opportunities to make a living? So really do that introspection, and then do some research. If, for example, if somebody were interested in an internship with our firm, it might be a good idea to actually do some research on the field of management consulting and see what it's all about, and then probably go onto our website and see what we're all about. I probably would not want to bring an intern on board that hasn't at least been on our website to kind of see, how we describe ourselves. And then a third form of homework might be, good old networking. I think all 4 of our interns came through somebody in our network. So just figure out, what do I need to do from a networking perspective? And then finally, when talking with an organization where there's some possibility of an internship, just be prepared to ask really good questions. Don't wing it when it comes to questions about, hey, what would this internship involve and so on. I think one thing you've heard from Vince, Greg, and myself is we certainly strive to give interns, some legitimate responsibility and not just busy work. But I think it would be really prudent to put some thought in some questions you can ask that would be both kind of appropriate and diplomatic, but would really get at the question of what they would actually have you doing, and if it's the level of work that you really want to be doing in an internship. So all that to say, do your homework, and I think that means a few different things.
Thanks, John. Vince, what do you think?
Well, John stole my answer, so I'm going to. I'm
And then
going
your
to.
friends.
I'm going to pretend this is an impromptu round, and I'm going to pivot to a completely different answer. I think there's a myth out there that there's two kinds of employers: those that have formal internship programs and those that have no internship program. And I was really impressed some years ago when I received an email from a student who wanted to do an internship under my supervision, and actually scoped out exactly what she intended to do. I'm currently with Feeding America, the national organization in Washington, but I was the CEO of Feeding San Diego, which is our member food bank for San Diego County. And she was studying a nutrition, she had a nutrition major, and she was studying certain aspects of community access to federal nutrition programs. And she wanted to spend the summer in the field, actually working with disadvantaged communities who had been shut out of these programs, and had 3 different methodologies that she was going to pilot for improving food access. So here's this email that's going to address a critical issue from my agency, isn't going to cost me any money, and is going to give me the opportunity to not only benefits from the fruit of that labor, but to potentially find somebody that I'm going to hire after graduation, because holy cow, what an ingenious self-starter and organized person. So you might be able to invent your own internship depending on your circumstances and your network.
What a great story. Thank you. Great.
So I'll kind of triangulate a little bit between the two. And the concept is don't prepare by yourself. My hunch is Vince, the student that you were there, the intern that you were talking about, probably didn't do all of the homework and all the conceptualizing around what they proposed to you all by themselves. They probably got maybe a professor, maybe an academic advisor to help them through it. Use those resources, and so that pivots to John's point. All that, all the types and facets of doing homework that John talked about. You don't have to sit and ruminate just on your own in a closet somewhere. What are all these questions that you should be thinking about, to bring up in an interview? Ask. There are plenty of people, both in the department and in other areas, across the university, who are resources, to help give you a little bit of a guidebook or a playbook. So you don't have to invent it, any of it from scratch.
Cool. Great answers. Thank you so much. So now I'm going to open it up to your questions. What would you like to know from our alumni panelists? Yes, and also introduce yourself.
Okay. I don't know if you can see me. Hi, my name is Katie. I'm a senior, so I'm actually graduating in the spring, sorry. And I have a question going back kind of to what you all were saying about how an internship can float your resume to the top and everything like that. I'm sure a lot of other people are in a similar boat, but COVID kind of, messed up some opportunities or things like that, put a slow on them. So I was wondering, maybe because I've been trying to get internships for probably, a year and a half now. And the ratio I'm getting is like 10 applications, maybe 1 response, which, yeah, it's hard to do. So, there is going to be that kind of difference. But I was just wondering if you guys had any advice on how to stand out to even get an internship when I've been struggling to even get to that point. And obviously it's not an easy thing to obtain, but I was just wondering if you guys had any more thoughts on that.
Great. Thanks, Katie.
I'll go first, because I just want to underline the word that John used earlier, network. You may not think of yourself as having a network yet, but you do. And if you open up an Excel spreadsheet and in column A, write the name of everybody you've ever met in your life, and in column B, wrote something about why you know them, a network is not something that is accidental or incidental. It is something that is consciously constructed and maintained. And through everybody in your social media connections, their parents, business colleagues, professors, teachers, mentors, other students, your social media connection. I mean, you are in a network right now. You just haven't formalized any process to manage your network. And once you start to formalize a process for managing your network, you'll be able to identify through LinkedIn and other tools the connections that you already have to the places that you might want to do an internship. It is labor intensive, but you're investing in your own career. So it's literally the best investment you can make.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would absolutely extend that, and hustle and hustle smart. Because I think that those are two very different things. You can hustle, but be a hamster on a wheel. Or you can hustle smart in some effective ways. I'm a big advocate and proponent of LinkedIn. I think you can also use it, even to create a network. There's nothing wrong with going on LinkedIn, searching for San Diego State alums, in organizations that you're interested in interning, and just cold reach out to them. Send a quick note to connect, saying, "Hey, I'm a student at San Diego State," and use the informational interview. It's a low pressure, low investment on your, I'll call it your target, on your target's behalf. You're not asking for a job. You're asking for information. You want to learn more about what they do. You want to learn about their experience, how they got to where they are in their current role. And then at the end, is there anybody else you can recommend, who I might benefit talking to? And would you be able to arrange that introduction for me, please? You can always make one ask in an informational interview. And that's typically the one I would always recommend. If that person's hired, you don't have to ask if they're hiring or not. If they're hiring and they like you or they were impressed by you, they'll let you know, oh, hey, by the way, I'm going to send you a link to a job that so you never really have to ask, hey, can you hire me? And that's a little off-putting. But when you ask someone, hey, I want to learn about you, how you got to this prestigious role that you're currently in. Everyone likes a little compliment, and want to be asked, about themselves and how they got to where they are. Some people will say no. You will get ignored. Some people will say they don't have time. I think if you've got some type of hook, the San Diego State graduate hook is a pretty good one. I'd say you'll have a pretty decent response rate, and you'll get some established connections that way. And if the worst thing that happens, if it doesn't become a durable connection, but you just learn a little bit about, a role or how someone got to where they are, that's fantastic knowledge to store away.
Let me just echo that. My wife teaches at San Diego State, and over the years, she's encouraged a number of her students to reach out to me asking for an informational interview, and I have never once declined that. So I think, there are a lot of us out there that, we went to San Diego State or we've been in your shoes before, and we sincerely would like to help students. So don't be shy about, looking for opportunities to do informational interviews. I also like Greg, I think LinkedIn is a great tool. And I think it's probably wise, whether you're like Katie, senior graduating in the spring, or, you're, in your first year at San Diego State or anywhere in between, start thinking of yourself as a professional right now, and be on LinkedIn and start creating a profile that, looks professional, whatever sort of profession you're contemplating, because there's a good chance that if you approach a firm about some sort of internship, they're going to go on your profile and they're going to form an impression of you as a potential person that they might want to, collaborate with in some capacity. I think the other thing is, I'm going to tell another quick story. It just so happens that our firm is hiring for 2 positions right now. And actually, earlier today, I was exchanging emails with a colleague about the fact that we have somebody that got through 2 initial interviews, and we're trying to schedule a 3rd interview, and they have been non-responsive. It's like, we're trying to get this thing firmed up, and they're not. And I see Vince shaking his head and Greg rolling his eyes. It's like the way you show up in the process of setting up the informational interview or setting up an opportunity to be considered for an internship, that firm is forming impressions of your responsiveness, your reliability. Is this something we'd want to have in a role where we're going to give them some legitimate responsibility? And just make sure that you are super responsive, super responsible, so that you don't give them any reason to say this isn't somebody we'd want to bring on board.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, you're gonna put a
Just
plug in?
really quick, because we did I think it was over COVID, a LinkedIn seminar, Lambda Pay. Did anyone come to that? They gave, LinkedIn. It's all about it. And building a profile that makes you stand out, Eden, which may mean changing some of your pictures away from the dorm rooms or whatever at San Diego State.
No red cups.
Yeah, that's all we're saying.
Yeah. And SDSU Com Alumni is a LinkedIn group. So that's something that you can search. I love that idea, to search for SDSU alumni. Yeah.
Definitely cold ask.
Yeah.
Actually, some of the best responses you get will be from cold emailing someone that you have a relationship to, and all that relationship has to be is an alumni, that you both are from this department.
Mhm.
I'll think you're cool already.
That's right. So great question, Katie. Thank you. And thank you for all of those ideas.
To the cold email thing, I would just quickly add, we're a 150 person company. I think 6 of our current employees are people who reached out to me cold on LinkedIn and asked for connections and asked for an informational interview. And, sometime within a few weeks, we had a role. Sometime it was a year later. I've had some people remind me, oh, hey, you were really nice when you did an information interview with me a year ago. I'm like, well, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I'd totally forgotten. But it's powerful and it does work.
Cool. Thank you. Yes. And what's your name?
Destiny.
Destiny.
Should I face like that?
Yeah, I don't think that. Come over here a little bit. They can't. You're right under the camera, so they can't see you.
I guess I'll stand it.
All right.
Hi guys, I'm Destiny. I've also had kind of a tough time finding an internship, but what I've done is I started volunteering, and that has allowed me to network, like you guys talked about. But would you say like volunteering has like at least kind of the same weight as an internship to have like that floating effect you guys are talking about?
Good question.
Yeah.
I would say different weight, but certainly no worse. It tells something about you. So my wife and I are active with our local animal shelter. So I listed on my professional, resume, and it says something about me, to whoever might be reading my resume. It's also something to connect and talk about. If you do get that interview with someone, they're like, oh, you volunteered at whatever. It can be a conversation starter. And you have taken the initiative to do something to give away your time in exchange for value for someone else and an experience for you. Depending on the volunteer context, it may have some of the exact same components that a professional internship might have, or it may be in a non-professional sense. But there's absolutely no downside whatsoever. And in some cases can be every bit as valuable. Also, think about the number of people you might meet while volunteering who are then instant connections into your network.
Yeah, I agree with that. And kind of relating this back to what we were saying regarding LinkedIn a few minutes ago. I mean, at the risk of stating the obvious, at the bottom of each LinkedIn page, there's a place to include volunteer experience. And I will say that, when I'm looking at the LinkedIn profile, say of somebody that we're considering bringing on board, I'll always scroll down to that and see if they've got something there, because to Greg's point, it says something about a candidate that you are willing to take your valuable time and use it for some cause. And also, again, I think it says something that you would be thoughtful enough to say, hey, I want to include that in my LinkedIn profile, so people are aware that this is, part of who I am. So especially if you're really trying to get an internship and are finding, that it's challenging, particularly with an organization that's in the field that you're interested in. To Greg's point, it may be that there may be some volunteer experiences you can get where somebody would be very eager to bring you on board to help with some good cause, and you would get some valuable experience in the process. So Destiny, I think it's a good thing that you're doing.
Yeah, and I certainly would echo everything that Greg and John said. I would add that my career experience for the last 20 years has largely been in the nonprofit sector. And with nonprofit corporations, being a volunteer is just a incredibly significant positive development on your resume. I mean, as CEO of Feeding San Diego, any resume, no matter how thin, that said that this person had volunteered at Feeding San Diego was elevated to a much higher level of consideration for an internship or for a job. So if you're thinking at all about the nonprofit sector, recognize that the volunteers are viewed as the gold standard, because in a nonprofit environment, you want to hire somebody who not just has the skills and experience and qualifications. You want to hire somebody who's passionate about the purpose of that nonprofit. And when somebody volunteers their time to that nonprofit, they express that in the most sincere way. So you also got me thinking that volunteering at a nonprofit can evolve to an internship, because you can be there and in communication with their executives and find an opportunity to translate your volunteership into an internship, and then have something that would have resonance even to for-profit corporations afterward.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Great question. Others? Jasmine?
My name is Jasmine. What about for those of us who may or may not have criminal background? So like I've gone through the whole interview process several times, but as soon as they ask that question, it always kind of makes them go, and then I never get really a response back. So.
Well, I know, I'm sorry, did you say criminal? You said criminal backgrounds.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, some of the absolute most dedicated, hardest working, innovative, and inspiring employees that we have hired have been people who are bouncing back from an incarceration or lesser degrees of getting caught up in something. And the story that accompanies that often expresses the values that companies are most looking for: resilience, an ability to set goals and achieve goals. And I know that there are companies for whom that is just a barrier to entry, but I promise you that there are other places where a successful rebound is actually a quantifiable advantage.
And I'm going to jump in here just because Vince said something that I'd like to illustrate maybe a little bit. Vince, you made reference to the values that an organization is looking for. This kind of gets back to my comment earlier about doing a little bit of research. If you were to go on our firm's website, you would see that we have our firm's values right on our website. And one of our values is the value of grace, right? And so if somebody were approaching us about an internship and they were in a bounce back situation like what Vince described, I would be very open to them saying, hey, your firm value statement includes a reference to grace. Tell me a little bit about what that means to you all. And let's talk about, my own situation and how that might relate. So, and conversely, while you're doing your due diligence, you might find something about an organization that suggests that, hey, you know what, this might not be a firm where they or an organization where they're going to look at it the same way this other one might. So I think it's a great point, Vince, about how we kind of look at a situation like that, and you can do some discovery to find out, is this a place that might be a good fit in light of that.
Yeah, I think I kind of extend Vince, a couple of comments you made. I'd say make it part of your narrative and your story, and it might not be a tactic in every interview and in every interview process or context, but making it part of that narrative that you proactively bring up early on in the process, and I think talking about the themes of resilience, things to overcome, overcoming adversity. I mean, these are typically the kind of things that someone probably wants to learn about someone in an interview process. How do you react to adversity? Tell me, an example of a time that you've overcome a challenge. I think the points about doing research on the places that you're applying to know where that narrative is probably gonna fit or resonate better than others. But I think you could turn it into a very compelling narrative. I think in a lot of contexts for a lot of people. John and his organization, that sounds like a perfect example of a place where hey, this place I can probably wear more on my sleeve about this part of my story.
And if I can just interject one final thought, I can't help but to put a plug in for an organization whose board I've been on for the last 4 years called Free to Thrive. And yeah, if anybody in this room knows somebody who was convicted of a crime like drugs or prostitution while they were under the control of a trafficker, and if you don't know what trafficker is, it is somebody who through psychological coercion is forcing somebody to engage in labor or the sex trade against their natural wishes. It may not be at gunpoint, but it's through coercion and intimidation. And Free to Thrive provides pro bono legal representation to people in that situation so that they can get what's called vacature. Vacature is a complete elimination of those convictions from a person's record so that they can answer no when they fill out a job application and they face that prompt. So I just had to throw that out there because chances are, given the fact that San Diego County is one of the highest areas of human trafficking in the country, that somebody in this room right now might know somebody who could use that information. So it's freetothrive.org.
Wow, thank you, Vince. It's great.
I know Jamie, so if you need more information, I can hook you up with that org.
Okay, great. Jamie is the CEO?
Yeah,
Okay.
founder.
Great. Thank you. Great question. Yes, and you are? Go ahead. Come on up.
I'm Becky, and my question is, how important do you think it is that like the experience you have right now matches the internship that you would want? Because I have like a part-time job, but it has nothing to do with like an internship that I'm potentially going for. So if you need tips on how important that is.
I think break down your current experience into some of the core elements. What are you doing? What are you learning? What are you achieving? So it could, I like to kind of shock people a little bit when I tell people that I love to hire bartenders for nearly any role, because there are people who can handle stress in a fast-paced environment, who deal with customer service, who do customer service with a clientele who's probably not always the nicest in the world. And the kind of people who, and think quick on their feet if I didn't say that, the kind of people who can do those things will thrive in a lot of professional environments other than behind a long wooden bar. So if you break down what you are doing into some of the core skills that you're practicing, and some of the themes that you're learning, you can make those apply to other types of professional contexts, I think, quite easily. Once you identify, I am practicing and improving my communication skills in these ways in this role, and that role as a lifeguard at the YMCA has nothing to do with management consulting, but practicing your communication skills can absolutely translate to management consulting.
Thanks. Great. Other ideas?
You know, I have to confess, I heard, I think you say my name is Betsy. And then I think I saw Vince make a gesture like you weren't hearing the question too well. I actually didn't hear the question. Greg,
I didn't hear it either.
it sounds like you did. Can you kind of paraphrase for me and Vince what the question was?
But I took from it the you know, what do you do when you're in an internship or a volunteer situation that doesn't have a direct kind of close line connection to, you know, a professional job that, you know, that you're applying for, or an industry that you're applying into.
Betsy,
Yeah.
was that a pretty good paraphrase?
So Becky,
Becky, okay.
yeah, she said that her job that she has to, you know, be able to put food on the table has nothing to do with currently with what she would like to do in an internship or in a professional context. And so Greg talked about, you know, picking the things that you do that do make that connection. Do you have any additional hints or answers to that, when a lot of us, you know, start out getting jobs that, you know, because they pay well and doesn't have anything to do with what we want to do in the future?
Yeah, so I guess, you know, it's a great question. There are, to me, two facets to this. One is the question of whether what you've been doing and what you want to do in an internship and perhaps beyond are similar or different. So there's the, you know, question of what you want to be doing, and then there's the question of what your previous experience has given you sort of knowledge, skill, and ability to do. So there's sort of the will question, what do you want to do? And then there's the skill question, what can you do? And I think Greg had a great response to the skill part of that, at least, which is, you know, most organizations that we work with these days, they have some sort of a competency model where they say, you know what, these are the competencies we're looking for. We're less hung up on where you've developed these competencies, but do you have these competencies? As an example, one of the people we recently interviewed for one of the two roles we're trying to fill comes out of a quite different field, but a part of our process was to have this person do a presentation to us. They got far enough in the process to do a presentation on something related to our field. And what we saw was their critical thinking skills, their presentation skills, and so on were outstanding, even though they've been in a completely different field. So I think Greg's right. You know, whether you're a bartender or whatever, if you've developed skills and competencies that might relate to, you know, what an internship might require for the firm to want to bring you on board, kind of play to those. And then I think when it comes to, you know, if I'm considering somebody as a possible intern, I think, you know, this is a time, you know, to be exploring what you really truly are interested in. And if somebody says, well, to kind of make ends meet, I've been doing X, but I think I'm really passionate about Y, and I'd really love to better understand what you all do and how it might fit with my passions. I mean, I think that's very compelling. So I think this is a time to be asking, what are my interests? What am I really passionate about? And just going for it.
I think the only thing I would add to this, because I agree completely with what Greg said and John, you know, in my theme of you can create your own opportunities, if you are in an employment relationship with somebody right now, you might be able to find a way to add something to your current work that serves your career purposes. So as an example, my daughter, who graduated from college a few years ago, worked in a bike shop where she fixed bicycles, which had nothing to do with her major, which was related to marketing. But she saw that the staging of products and that the advertising that was being put out in the campus was not very good quality. And so she spoke to the manager about essentially being the marketing manager for this bike store, and created, in addition to her regular responsibilities, something that looked very good on her resume. And so maybe in your current workplace, they don't have a community engagement program. And so maybe you go to the manager and say, you know what, I'm going to organize a group of people from this restaurant who are going to go volunteer at Feeding San Diego. And that's going to be the first act of our community engagement program. And then, you know, you create a mechanism by which employees are recognized for their participation. And maybe if they get a certain number of points, they get half a day of paid time off. and but then you are the community engagement program manager for that organization, even though that's not at all why they hired you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just-
but-
Go ahead.
I'm gonna have to throw in, there's a downside to volunteering at animal shelters. It means you become a foster fail. And Natasha has been desperate to introduce herself for a while, so I'm just gonna let her do so. So,
That's great, John, and then Dr. Check wants to add something. Go ahead, John.
I don't have any cute pets to show you, at least not here in my home office. But I will say, I think Vince just alluded to a really critical quality that I think any organization is probably looking for, and that is initiative. And if you just can show a firm that you're talking with regarding an internship or even an employment opportunity, examples of where you've demonstrated the kind of initiative that Vince's daughter did, it almost doesn't matter the context in which you did that. I think initiative is just a really important thing to be able to demonstrate.
Awesome, thanks, Dr. Check.
I would just argue that skills don't necessarily come from your jobs. All of you are here in college, you have the ability to effectively present and engage audiences in a public speaking setting. You have the ability to work interpersonally one-on-one with a client, to set goals, research, analyze problems, and provide outcomes. These are beautiful sounding things, and they're what you do when you're working for projects.
Yeah.
You have those skills, you just have to translate them to resume talk.
Yep, exactly. And I was gonna say, when John was talking about the term of competency, if you go on our website, we have what are called degree learning outcomes. And those degree learning outcomes are full of all of these action words about what we as our faculty have designed our curriculum to have you take with you. And now, since starting in this last spring, when you look at your syllabus for your classes, all of the faculty for their course learning objectives, it says this learning objective aligns with this degree learning outcome. So think about that in terms of you going to an interview or you kind of revising your resumes and thinking, what classes have I been in that have honed these competencies that are part of my degree learning outcomes that I'm taking away with me.
Ability to work as part of a team,
Yeah,
to negotiate through situations,
Yeah.
and engage in decision making.
manage conflict, these kinds of things. Yeah.
You're
So,
doing it.
Becky, sorry, Destiny.
I just wanted to give an example of it because I just went through this with career services, if I can.
Cool.
So I worked as a server for 3 years, and then I want to be in the environmental nonprofit field. Two things that don't seem like they go together. So one internship I applied for talked about training volunteers, and I trained support staff as a server. So then I connected those. And then another one wanted sales and customer service because I'll be selling like an educational program or something like that. And I connected sales and customer service from serving. And then another one wanted data analytics, and I do YouTube, so I connected data analytics with that. So you just gotta really think about what you're doing on a everyday basis.
Cool, that's great, Destiny, thanks. Good.
there is no job in the world that doesn't require some type of project management skills. No job, nothing. So if there's one area, it's one area that I totally underappreciated. Went through my entire academic career, even early professional career, not understanding, how important that was going to be. And it held me back a little bit in some of my early career stages. I'd say invest in your skills in that area. And no interviewer, no manager, supervisor, boss, is going to ignore someone who's a strong project manager. That person is going to succeed very quickly.
Thank you, great. Other questions, thoughts, ideas? From the panelists, what didn't I ask or what didn't we touch on that you thought of that you want to share with the students?
You know, go ahead, Vince.
Oh, sorry, John.
Oh,
Yeah,
please.
no, I mean, I would just say that you all have a really terrific major at a really terrific institution. And I say that as somebody who's hired over 800 people in my career, that being a communication major highlights from the first word an entire suite of skills that are so hard to hire in this current environment. And I don't know why that is. I don't understand the underlying causes. I'm not from academia, but I know that having people that can stand up and give a oral presentation, but also the quality of written work that is reflected from great oral communication skills is so necessary. The hardest thing I can find in my hiring these days is strong writers. And so the combination of skills that's encompassed by your major is a wonderful brand to wear as you look at the job market. And then San Diego State is just such a highly, highly regarded institution. Of course, in San Diego County proper, there's just an enormous penetration of San Diego State graduates because they come from all over, and for some reason they don't leave. I don't know why, but they you know, but then just nationally, the university is you know, historically it was part of the CSU system, and people kind of in an elitist way thought that the UC system was the top tier. San Diego State, with its enormous research budget and with its enormous campus size and prestige and academic achievements and its faculty, is regarded as being more aligned with the UCs than it is with Cal State Dominguez Hills. No offense intended to the fine people up there, but I mean, you're in a really good place with a really good degree as a starting point for a job search, if or an internship search.
And I'll capitalize on one thing you brought up there. That's just kind of the basics: critical thinking, writing skills, presenting. This is another do something to avoid one of my mistakes. I for some reason I didn't take a debate course as an undergrad. That was stupid. The core skills you learn in forming argumentation, both in terms of critical thinking, writing skills, do it. You don't have to go to be a professional debater or join the debate team. Get some of those core skills. They're available to you on a silver platter at San Diego State in the School of Communication. Take it.
I was about to say, I think Dr. Canary knows exactly what I'm about to say here. Several of the folks in our firm were debaters at San Diego State. So again, if you're midway through your last year, you may want to consider that for a semester. But especially if you have 1 or 2 or 3 years left at San Diego State, I could not agree more with Greg. It's such fantastic experience. And again, it develops competencies, whether it's critical thinking, communication, others that are truly valued by almost any organization. So I agree, take advantage of that. And then I guess my final word of wisdom would be, there's the old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And, we always like to talk about the importance of networks in these kinds of conversations. And of course, they're critically important, but I really think it's what you know and who you know. So yes, by all means, even maybe do what Vince said at the outset of this conversation, which is, don't just think about it, actually create a tool where you say, hey, who's actually in my network and how do I know them and who might I be able to reach out to? So really make this tangible, and at the same time realize that any organization you're talking with, whether it's for an internship or a position, they're really looking for not only who you know, but what you know. And I had somebody reach out to me recently that I met years ago, and I was sort of in his network, and we had a couple of conversations. Good guy and all of that, but he really hasn't done the things that he would have to have done over the years to position himself to really be able to join a firm like ours. And so he applied for a position, and he didn't even make it to the interview round. I don't mean to be a big downer or anything like that. It's just to say, yes, networking, building your network is critically important, but don't see that as a substitute for all the other stuff we've talked about here. where you are taking initiative and you are thoughtfully and deliberately building competencies that will truly be of value to an organization. And then that network becomes really powerful.
That's awesome. Wow. Oh, yes, that's, and your name?
Michaela, I'm Michaela. I was wondering, in terms of internships, I applied to a bunch of them, and I heard back for some, and they're asking for interviews recently. But some of them I realized they're different fields that I was interested in, and some I was like, maybe I'm less interested. Would it be harmful to take the interview if you're still unsure, or should you just not take it? Good question.
Oh, I've got strong feelings on this one. Can I? So, I don't know if it's my turn or not. I'm going to jump in. I think that all interviews, whether it's for internships or for jobs, are two directions. I think you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. You're trying to figure out if this is the right fit for you. And so if you pursue an opportunity and decide at the conclusion that it's not the right organization for you, but they decide you're the right person for them, there's absolutely no harm or shame or career damage in saying, I appreciate this so much. I have so much respect for you and your organization. But as part of the learning process, I've discovered this isn't quite the right fit for me and my career aspirations. There's no shame in that. Up until the last moment, they have the right to say no to you. The other side of that coin is up until the last moment, you have the right to say no to them.
Yeah. Interview goes both ways.
Yeah. All right. Great question. Thank you for finishing. Did you want to?
Well, I was just gonna say, but if you do take it, knowing it might not be right, then bailing 4 weeks later, that's not good.
Right. Yes, that's true.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you all, and let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Anyone who's interested in the internships and finding out how that works in terms of credits, we have variable credits. You can take them for 1, 2, or 3 credits every semester, including summer, here as part of your program. And so Dr. Chuck Gehring is our internship coordinator or director of internships, and we have a whole web page with frequently asked questions and his email address and all of that. So thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.